Hello, Mandibil here, and welcome to part 6 of my deconstruction of Stefan Molyneux's book, Essential Philosophy. And with the subtitle, How to Know What on Earth is Going On. And I mentioned in the last part that I'm running out of recording space-time, what it was, space-time, space-time, recording space-time on StreamYard, or at least that was what I thought I was. So I made a video yesterday where I take a stab at another Stefan Molyneux video. I'm sort of surrounded by Stefan. He's like, I'm possessed by Stefan Molyneux. What's that old movie, Martin Short, where he's possessed? The inner space, isn't it called, with a little robot in his bloodstream? Okay. I think that's what they got with the jab now, but that's another story. Please don't take it, right? Consider very carefully what you're doing if you're considering injecting yourself, because it could be a scandal of biblical proportions we're dealing with here, right? Okay. Hoping that I'm not being flagged for being politically incorrect and getting another strike on YouTube. I will head into the book Essential Philosophy. Now I was talking about the StreamYard. The problem is, or the thing, they have like 20 hours free each month, and I was just going back 1 month and counting how many I've done. I've done all these deconstruction videos, so there's a pretty much many of them. I spent a good deal of time, and I was close to, when I counted that way, I was close to the 20 hours. So I think I'll just give it a rest, right, and wait until a new batch arrived. But then I got a mail from StreamYard telling me about, I'm going into I'm running out of time, and I should consider upgrading. And I thought, well, yeah, sure. But then I read that, I saw a notice that I had spent 10 hours of my 20 hours. So I said, well, only 10 hours? That's weird. But then they were counting from the October 10th and stating that you would have to, from November 10 is sort of the 20-hour limit date. So I was thinking, okay, then I must still have 10 hours left. So I said, oh, okay. But then I saw this video Stefan Molyneux just made about UPB, which is this is one of my, right, okay, when he does something about UPB, I'm going to get into it, right? So I was sort of went into that. I deconstructed the first 12 minutes, and it took me almost 2 hours, right? And his video is more than 2 hours long. So God knows how long that will take to get through, right? But, and maybe I'll jump a little in it because it may be too much. But when it's UPB, then I'm down with it, right? But then again, I was thinking, okay, maybe I should go back to Essential Philosophy and put the other one on the back burner, or do that intermittently, maybe. But it depends on, I always spent almost 2 hours yesterday, so now I only have 8 hours left, right? And I'm only like, 1/8 through this book. And I'm already sort of, I wouldn't say I'm bored with it, but it's just like, I really can't stand his writing. And that's my personal judgment, right? But when we're talking about philosophy, he has a preacher approach to philosophy. Philosophy is something you preach to people. This is how it is, right? Like you're preaching from the Bible or something like that, right? That's not what philosophy is. Philosophy is your thinking. It's a kind of thinking. And in my opinion, it should be pure philosophy in the sense that it should sort of follow your reasoning and it's not reasoning. It's not only reasoning. It's philosophy is everything you do to get a handle on what the hell is going on in your head or in your mind, or the whole experience of it, and how does it all come together, right? And that's not the feeling I get when I read Stefan Molyneux. It's like, yes, I have tapped into, you know, philosophy, and I have the you know, I have the 10 commandments sort of, right? And now I'm just going to present it to you, right? It's not a thinking approach to philosophy. It's you know, a preaching approach to philosophy, and that's what it could be. I mean, it's not illegal. It's fine in the sense that if that's his approach, okay, fine. But it's not something it doesn't work for me very well, right? It doesn't give me that enlightening. I feel like I'm slightly being manipulated, right? And it doesn't help that he's so bad at defining things, or he's equating words, and he's using this flowery language now and then, which he also calls sophistry. So he uses sophistry now and then. And basically, this is an agenda sprinkled with philosophy, right? And it was very clear in The Art of the Argument, right? It was, you know, it was not even between the lines, it was within the lines, right? That it's a political agenda, right? And I was reminded in his recent video that one of his first texts was something that is a short version of UPB. I might stab into it at some point, right? But it's basically, he says, proving libertarian morality, something like that, right? On Lou Rockwell website from 2005, where he basically uses the argument: if you argue against me, you are proving my morality, right? And then it's clear it has a purpose. There's an agenda. It's libertarian. It's anarchist. It's whatever it is, you know, anarcho-capitalist. But that's not how philosophy works, because agenda-driven philosophy is another way of saying sophistry, right? In my opinion, philosophy should be as disconnected from any ideals or ideologies or preconceptions or, you know, presuppositions and prejudice and any kind of that. It should be freaking pure and stay there as far as humanly possible, so that if people want to bring in their prejudice, they have to force it into the text rather than being told about this ideology, because that will have the opposite effect, in my opinion, both because it's bad philosophy, in my opinion, but it will only solidify people, and they're well known. Is it the Dunning-Kruger effect? I'm not even sure. Where if you argue against people, they will band even more together in the misconception of how things are, right? So the less agenda you can have, the better philosophy. Then it will become some kind of pure philosophy, which is a term I'm sort of getting quite fond of recently, right? And an approach I take in my writing book on ethics. So, and it's I mean, my book on ethics, just to spend a few words on that, right? It has gone through, you know, a transformation, or 3 or 4 transformations, from the approach I took from the beginning of writing the book to the approach I'm using now, which is vastly different, right? Which is more in line with what I just said. I'm trying to, as far as possible, avoid any preconceptions of what I'm doing, right? And actually, that is one of the things that Stefan Molyneux, at least in writing or in statement, approaches, right? Like, I'm going to pretend that there's no morality, and then I'm building a framework from there. That's actually not a very bad, that's actually a pretty decent approach to philosophy. But then he just goes in and violates its time and time again by taking a lot of things for granted, and presuppositions and prejudice and all sorts of agendas and political stuff and all that. It's really sad in a way, right? Because I believe he, in what struck me back, you know, like 10 years ago, right? I think it was about 10 years ago I first watched a video of his. That was, he had some really what's the word? Clever connection. What struck me was, and maybe that's because that usually had been a weakness of mine, not connecting dots in a way, or comparing situations. You can say, take one situation over here where there was some sort of certain principles working, and then go over here and say, well, if they work here, they should be working over here as well. And there was it. Yeah, that's right. Why is it only over here? What about over here, right? But in my mind, everything I was a trained zombie almost back then. Not quite, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here, right? But it's this sort of universality, in this sense that, well, if the principle works here, it should work over here also. Why not? That's a human being. That's a human being. If they can kill, they can kill. If they can't kill, they can't kill. So this kind of sort of, it's a bare bone kind of thinking. I like that, right? It's like, yeah, why not? I mean, what's the difference? I mean, there may be an explanation, right? And the point is not that you're pointing out any principle by pointing out contradictions in other people's thinking. That's not a way to insights, just pointing out that other people are wrong, or that there's something that should explain at least, right? But at least you are fertilizing your own thinking or your own philosophy, because you sense there's something wrong in what most people around you are, how they argue. They're just, full of it, basically, right? And that's when you don't create a principle or a philosophy just from that, or it sparks your philosophy, right? You want to dig deeper and see what is really going on here. Can they say anything at all, right? So that's what got me into philosophy. I realized there's a lot of bullshit I'm just I'm just accepting without any reason to accept it, other than that's what I usually do, right? And that's a stupid argument, right? Okay, so what we're dealing with here, I've always spent 12 minutes. Oh my God, time is running out. But I was mentioning that if you want to donate or something like that, and if you can't donate, fine. I mean, it'll just I have a lot of time hopefully left, right? So I'm not going to spend $25 or whatever it is to get a month subscription. I'm not going to spend that. I don't have that much money actually in donations, right? So I have to, save up a bit, right? I'm not going to. I have a few, expenses using my phone or whatever I use when I drive and record, and sitting here and recording and so on. But it's not a biggie, right? It's not a huge deal, right? So I do this out of my free from my, I want to do it, right? But it would be nice to also. It's nice to have a feeling that people like what you're doing, and if they like what you're doing, they give you a little tip here and there. That would be nice, right? But I'm not a big donator to other people, right? For one reason is I don't have that much money at the moment, at least, right? And secondly, it's like they really need to deserve it, right? So I'm sort of shooting my own foot here, right? So, but if you can tap in a bit, well, fine. And if you can't, that's also fine, right? So if you think I deserve something, please, right? So, but now I'm going into essential philosophy, and let's see how far I get before I really run into the wall of time here, right? So after all this mumbo jumbo talk, let's head into what we are talking about the last time. And excuse me, I have to wind back a bit here. Philosophy and control, I think was yes, where we started off last time. And one thing he talked about, he said, I can't do much to control my digestion or blood flow, nor can I stop my heart with my mind. No, but that's all. I discussed that last time, and I won't go too much into it. It's just to recapture my thinking, right? That you have control of what you call reality to the extent that you sort of can and or need, right? And there's no way of saying why you need or why you don't need, but you can fabulate about, okay, that I can't control my heart, because it makes sense for me not to control my heart, because whatever I might do with that control might end up killing me at some point, right? So it's better that it just beats as the without my intervention. And I think that's a good gymnastics to have in mind when you're going into decision making and reasoning and logic and all these. What makes you perform certain actions rather than other actions, and what does it mean to have the idea of the action rather than performing the action, and so on, right? So these are interesting aspects, but this control chapter is very, very light. It doesn't really get you into understanding what is the deeper sort of philosophical things that needs to be handled by you when you philosophize in order to handle this, right? It's just he gives some hints at it, but he doesn't get down in the deeper levels, right? So you might even say, oh yeah, that sounds interesting, and then not realizing what deep philosophy that might lie between the lines there. And that's slightly concerning, right, in a book called Essential Philosophy. But then I can hear him say, right, but it's essential philosophy, it's not deep philosophy, right? So these, it's like he always creates some kind of get out of jail card where he can always say, yeah, but it's not meant to be that way, right? And you've seen him possibly many times do that, sort of chickening out some way or another without dealing with the actual question, rather than find some excuse why it doesn't need to be so. Okay, the first level of control is over our minds. The second is over our own bodies. Second is over our own bodies, and that's a difficult one to say. The first level of control is over our own minds. Do you have control of your mind? That's a very, very far-fetching, deep statement, right? The first level is that. Are there other levels of control? Well, the first, you're just stating it. You're not inviting people in to think about their own experience and relate to what you're saying. You're just stating this is how it is. This is the 10 Commandment approach, right? The first level of control is this. The second level of control is this. The third level of control is the fourth level, right? If you're not inviting people in to think the way you think, and even, I mean, you should know that. As an artist, you could use your artistical skills to sort of think, how would people understand this, right? So, okay, the first level of control is over our own minds. Now, I don't like this, our minds. You can't control our minds, right? I know this is a figure of speech, but these things are important, right? Some text needs to be freaking precise, right? You can have control over our minds. You can have control over your own minds, providing that you can have control over mind, right? So he could say that you can have control over your mind, but how does he know? He hasn't experienced other people's mind, right? How the hell could he? He's just presupposing that everybody else has a mind. I'm not saying that people don't have a mind, but he's presupposing that's the case, and he's not stating that he's presupposing that, right? It's a very, very big problem, his way of philosophizing, taking so much for granted that he's actually should spend time on philosophizing about, right? And how do you control your mind? Well, what does that mean, control your mind? Are you really controlling your mind? What's the idea of control? Give me an example of how you control your mind. If you experience elephant, I say that's an elephant. Am I controlling my mind in a way that influences whether or not I'm experiencing elephant? Well, no, I'm not. I can say that, yeah, that's because I have a concept and my concept matches the elephant and so on. But that's not what's going on. That's a fallacious way of understanding how your cognitive apparatus works and how the metaphysics of your mind is put together. You have an experience of elephant, let's say, right? You could even debate whether or not elephant is an experience. I would actually argue that it isn't a part of the experience. You have sensual data called qualia, the color, the sound, and so on, right? And at some point, some of these sounds and this set of qualia pops up as an elephant in your mind, but the elephant is the concept in your mind. It's just labeled on this particular set of qualia. It's not the elephant that arrives and then you analyze the qualia. That's you're putting the cart before the horse. It's the qualia on your screen of experience or perception, you could say, right? That the mind identifies as a specific concept, right? That's how it works. But do you know? Do you have control over that cognition or recognition? No. It's the mind doing it by its own accord. You are not in control of what you experience and what you recognize. That's the best I can say, because how would I? Then I would be able to, if I wanted a big layered cake here beside me, I would be able to say, well, there it is, right? I can't control it. So what are you talking about when you control your mind? I don't understand it, actually. I'm highly skeptical of this statements like this. This is very problematic, right? Then you have control over your body, but isn't the mind is talking as if there is a separate you, right? There's a you that is having this kind of control over your mind and over your body. So if the first level it's the level of control, but it's not the first level of mind, so to say, right? So what is that prior or that thing above that has this control, right? What is it that is controlling? Is that, the duality from Descartes or what, right? And if there's an I there that is different from the experience, how do you know that experience is what you think it is? You're experiencing elephant, but how do you know there's some elephantness in it, other than you can say, I have the experience? What is really there when it all comes down, right? I know we're getting down to the deepest level now, right? And I would say you can't say what is there, because you haven't accessed what the thing is based on, because you are in an experience, not in the thing itself. You're not in that which the experience is based on. Precisely because you only have experience. You're an experience machine, right? You're not a reality machine, in the sense that if you call that outside world reality, if reality is that which is actually there, if there's anything there, then you don't have access to reality. But if you call reality that experience you have of it, well, then the things themselves that the experience is based on. And he fails completely to see the huge contradiction or paradox in his metaphysics that is implicitly in his thinking. He thinks that what he experiences is the actual external world. This is a huge problem, because it can't be, right? You can't be experiencing the external world. You can only experience or have the experience version of it, right? As I pointed out in my metaphysics, is that, okay, you have this experience, and then you claim that it's something, the experience is something outside yourself. Well, if you look at the understanding of your experience, then my mind is here, right? And this out here can't be a part of my experience then, because it must be inside my head somewhere, right? In my brain. And if you say it's not a part and everything is your experience, well, then I'm living inside your mind. There's no room where I could be as an external world, right? So then it's just solipsism. But if you don't go with solipsism, you have to somehow say that there's something outside. But if you use your experience to classify something as outside, can you see the problem in that? It is a problem, because if it's an experience you have inside your head, it cannot possibly outside your head, right? If it's outside your head, you can't experience it. Right? So this is the problem of idealism. It's just a label that is put on, right? And idealism has a really bad rap. And I understand why, because most of those woo-woo bastards, idiots, who want to validate all kinds of shit, right? Putting, rocks in your pockets and metaphysics of, this woo-woo shit, right? They all want to go into religion or all sorts of collective stuff, all sorts of bullshit they can put there because people can go check it, right? That's the old trick, and that's why materialists or physicalists, they let me be alone over here, right? And that's sad, because it's actually somewhere in between these two kinds of thinking that I believe that the correct understanding of metaphysics lies, right? And in the 20th century, metaphysics has basically been rejected, right? That we only need science, right? And see how far that has got us in the 20th century. Yeah, 250 million killed by their own government, right? So we have to get back to a more subjective understanding of how things are. If there's only objectivity that is important, then everybody can say, well, I have access to that objectivity. And if you don't fit in, then fuck you, I'm going to kill you because there's something wrong with you, right? So there's no room for individual thinking in this realm. That's a very big problem with the materialism or physicalism. So I would urge Stefan Molyneux to get a grip on this kind of metaphysics. And it's not an attempt at confusing him, which he would probably say, oh, you are trying to create doubt in me, so I will not trust my own thinking, and I will just accept what you are saying as a stupid, hypnotized idiot. Something. No. Yeah, there are possibly people doing that, but that's not my approach, right? I want to get to the philosophy, right? I want to philosophize. I want to understand. And as he himself has pointed out, that there cannot be any contradictions, right? If there's contradictions in your philosophy, you've done something wrong, right? There's something that doesn't work, right? Okay. That which we cannot choose to change falls under the definition of what we call objective or external reality. Now, I don't even know what to say about this, right? So what does it mean to control or change? Is that synonym? So controlling is that moving things about and making sure that this object, if I have my cup of coffee here, I can move it over here. Now I'm controlling it because now it's over here. I want it over there instead of over here. Is that control? Am I not changing objective external reality? This is an object. This is a fact. This is my cup. There's even some coffee in it. Isn't it external? I experience it as outside myself. Isn't it reality, that thing that is realized? And am I not changing it? And now it's over here. Now my coffee is over there, right? In order for me to interact with it, I have to have the understanding in which part of my reality it is. And the change of that reality is due to my intervention. So I am choosing to change my coffee to over here now, right? So I don't understand what he's trying to say. Is he talking about laws of gravity? Something like that, right? Is ever unchanging? Well, that's also bullshit, right? Because Newton was not completely right. There was a problem with going at high speeds, apparently, right? So, that which we cannot change is the foundation of objective reality. Okay, so that's how far I got the last time. And I might want to delete this note. No, I don't know how to delete notes. Maybe I'll figure out someday. Okay, get away. That which we cannot change is the foundation of objective reality. I have actually not really any idea why he's saying that. I just showed you how I changed reality, right? I mean, what does that mean? I can't change that. This is my coffee cup or a coffee cup, right? Can I change that? What if I, throw it into a volcano and it sort of possibly melts and goes up in flames? Am I not changing it? It's just like it's simply not specified enough what the hell he's talking about, right? You can't just make statements like this and then throw in a few like after our control to. I can choose to crank up a Queen song on my headphones. I cannot choose whether the volume damages my hearing. No, but if you get a damage of your hearing, you get a damage of your hearing. But you can still control in sort of a reasoning or rationality setting whether or not you will be likely to get that. You can take off your fucking headphones and put it on the floor and let's listen to it there. You will possibly not get damaged, right? But if you get the damage, well, you can't change that. It's sort of irreversible, right? So it is in this kind of fluffy argumentation. This is simply not good enough for decent philosophy. And then you say, yeah, but it's just essential philosophy, right? Meaning it's like, it's just superficial kind of philosophy, right? It just has to give the pretense that Stefan Molyneux knows what he's thinking about, so that his acolytes reading this book is thinking, wow, he must be very, very smart, right? I have to do what he says. And if you scratch a bit under the surface, there's nothing there. It's an empty bag of piss and wind, right? Well, that's contradictory. Okay, you get my drift, right? Okay, let's see what he has to say. And we're still in the chapter of philosophy and control. The challenge is that the human brain exists within objective reality, but the mind is changeable. We will get to more on this later. Oh yeah. Okay. These statements, it's just, this is the case because this is the case. It's like, but why don't you sort of start from a reduction-based vantage point and move forward, right? So that you can argue why you are arguing this. Just making statements is not philosophy. It actually isn't philosophy. It's just bullshit. No, it may not be bullshit, but just making the statements is not philosophy. The philosophy is the kind of thinking you make in order to reach the statement, right? To summarize the 4 levels of control, we have the mind, which controls itself. Okay, so that's what I was asking about before, right? The mind controls itself. Is that good thinking? So if you have the mind, there's some sort of whatever fluffy thing here, right? And then some part of the mind over here is controlling that part of the mind over here, or is the mind completely in control of control? If the mind is complete control, then what is that, right? And if it's a part of the mind that is controlling another part of the mind, what is that controlling thing compared to the rest of the mind, right? So you're avoiding the problem by saying it's just, controlling itself. So I fixed that, right? What's going on there? Because you are actually pointing to it as if you have some insight into it. But you need to use that control of your mind to get to that which controls your mind. You see, there's a built-in paradox there. You have to control your mind in order to make the statement that there's something controlling your mind. So before you figure out that there's something controlling your mind, or part of the mind that controls another part of the mind, you have to use that control of your mind in order to figure out that there's something controlling your mind. This is the infinite regression of knowledge, right? It's a big problem in epistemology, the infinite regression of knowledge. So he's just saying it controls itself. Oh, I fixed it, right? It's like, oh man, it's bad, right? Okay, we have the body, which is to some degree controlled by the mind because the body references the brain. The body references the brain. we have the body, which is to some degree controlled by the mind, because the body references the brain. So he's saying references the brain. He means the mind is in control of the body. There's a reference. There are, avenues of control between the body and the mind, so to say, right? So the body is sort of subordinate to the mind, to the level that the mind is able to control the body, something like that. So there's the control of mind, which is above mind, and then there's mind, which is above body to some extent, to the degree that mind can control body. So it's sort of a hierarchy of control. Okay. We have manipulatable objects which cannot be directly controlled, unlike the body, but which can be controlled by the body secondhand, so to speak. Okay, I think I understand what he's getting at, right? I don't think it's very well. It's very, very, very lightly explained, but I do get an idea of what he's saying, right? And this is actually not very far from the way I'm arguing about my experience. So I understand where he's trying to go with this, but the problem he's going to have with this is that it's so lightly argued that you don't even realize the importance of this. This is hugely important in my point, right? So this kind of levels of control, the further you get away from the mind, so to say, the less control you have, you could say, right? But this further away thing, right, or this further away from the reach of the mind or something like that, this is based on an implicit axiom that there is actually spatiality to it, right? There's nothing in your experience that says that it must be something outside yourself. This is a built-in axiom he's working from, as if it's settled, as if exterior reality is something that is arriving without needing to be classified as such first. That's a lack of axiomatic or first principle approach to philosophy, right? Even though he talks about first principles, he has to identify whenever he jumps into conclusions. He just jumps into that external world as if, okay, how did you get to it that it's external? Well, it is. No, it isn't. There's nothing that just is in philosophy. You have to build from the foundations and then at least make the axiom that says, I'm going with the notion that my experience represents something external. Then you have the axiom. Then you have a first principle that you're working from, right? And I would say that the good deal of basic philosophy is about making axioms, because it's not something you can prove, right? Exactly, because you're not referencing something that is objective before you get to objectivity, right? Then you can make definitions, because definitions is sort of a way of enlightening other individuals about what you make a definition because you want to be sure that you're talking about the same thing, right? So, okay. Before that, it's basically axioms. I would say that maybe I would say that knowledge is a definition, but it has to be based on all the previous axioms you have used to reach the level where you can say, now I'm defining knowledge. Okay. The fourth level is where we have zero control, and this is where we find objective, empirical, uncontrollable reality. Okay. I think I will remove these up here. No, that's not how you do it. That's how you do it. Okay. So we have the four levels here. We might get back to those later. Let's see. You may disagree with me that the fourth level is the foundation of objective reality. Yeah, I do. Because just as I did with my coffee cup just now, right? You could say that I am influencing reality. I am not changing reality. I'm not influencing reality. I'm just, kicking it around so it it is composed in a way that is more beneficial to me. Yeah, or I'm moving myself. Instead of moving the cup, I could move myself towards the cup, right? So it's this, the 4 F's, fighting, fleeing, fogging, and feeding, right? What do I want to do with it, right? I want to feed from this, right? I want to, I'm moving so I can feed on this coffee. And I assure you I'm not going to fog it, right? Although it might be one of the best videos I ever made. Who knows? Okay. You can think of an elephant. My elephant. You can think of an elephant in your mind. You cannot magically summon an elephant to appear in reality. That's right. That's a good one. I like that. That's a good one. Because what it's saying is that your cognition is, as I said earlier, you are not in control of your cognition. Now, this is a minefield that is. This is my to reference my own book I'm writing. Right, I'm at this point. I'm dealing with this in my book right now, and I'm really struggling to get it right. Right, I'm not struggling to get it right. I'm struggling to. It's a tight knit of all sorts of things going on at the same time in your mind. So it's sort of rife with wrong turns, right? The cognitive apparatus is where everything is going on, both your immediate experience on your memories and your cognitions and your inductions and your deductions, and also everything is, it's a big apparatus where things are going on all the time, right? Also the stories you have been told, and the references to words, meanings, and the feelings you get from hearing certain words. All of this shit is going on in real time all the time in your mind, or at least when you're waking hours, right? And when you're sleeping, well, then there's dreams and sort of things like that, right? Okay, so these things are very important to get a handle on, and that's why I'm going deep on this particular thing in my book, and it's going to be fairly. I'm trying to make it as less complicated as I can, but still making sure that the essence of it is complete, right? And it has what needs to be there in order to make the right understandings and not go into a wrong turn, right? So hang on for a sec. I need my loading cable. No, it's not called a loading cable. It's called what's it called? Power cable. Excuse me for that. I forgot that one. As I usually do now. There's juice on it. Okay, so let's keep on. I'm really trying to make sure that I get a handle on this and that it connects with my metaphysics and my knowledge, right? So this is the big. This is my personal PhD of philosophy, right? This is the part that has to be really freaking good, right? Because otherwise I will destroy my metaphysics and my knowledge and my ethics in the last. So this is a pivotal point, understanding the human cognition, right? And this is a good point. That if you think of an elephant, you could say, like Hume says, there are ideas and there are what's he called, impressions, right? Impressions and ideas. What he means is, in my opinion, is that the idea is the concept of the elephant, just the concept, right? You can refer to a concept of an elephant, but it's sort of faint and doesn't have the usual attributes, the usual qualia you would refer to when you experience that elephant, right? But that one you can conjure at will. I couldn't imagine some kind of grayish elephant over there, right, outside my window, and that's fine. But that's not a real elephant, because the real elephant will pop into your cognition when there actually is, I can't say that, no, because that's the same as saying that my experience is that I'm actually having, and it's sort of a double layer, right? So that's not a very good way of saying it. That's the kind of elephant. This with the words, right? The important elephant for your rationalization and your reasoning is the one you actually experience, because that's the one that you can't conjure at will, right? That's why it's important, because you can't conjure it. You can't imagine that elephant, and it's also very much stronger in the vivacity, as Hume would say, right? The strongness of the vision and the smell and the sound and so on, right? So you can recall it from your memories of particular instances of previous experiences of elephant, right? But those are not real elephants, in the sense that they are not impressions of elephant, right? When you get the impression of elephant, you also get all sorts of emotional things, right? If an elephant suddenly popped into a real elephant, appeared around my garden here, I would sort of be slightly freaked out, right? But I don't freak out when I imagine an elephant out there, right? Okay. But I imagine an elephant out there. So that's a good, at least he understands this, right? That's good. When you think of a peach, your mouth may water, but you cannot eat one without finding some way to put an actual peach in your mouth. No, I agree. You can control your thoughts. You can initiate movement in your hand. You can pick a peach, but you cannot alter physical laws, gravity, or the properties of atoms. Well, that's another thing, right? Because physical laws are not something that exists in that objective reality he talks about. That's exactly something that only exists in somebody's mind, right? And why can't you alter physical laws? Of course you can. You can improve them, altering. Maybe depending on what you mean by altering. But Einstein, clarified Newton's physical laws, right? Of gravity. Well, I mean, he did. But why would isn't that an altering? And physical laws and gravity, is that the same you're referring to? Properties of atoms? You're sort of, I know it's just it's a loose talk here, right? But gravity is also an understanding. That's an interpretation of what is going on. The properties of atoms, right? That is, so when we get into sort of chemistry or quantum physics or something like that, right? It's quantum mechanics. It's like, that's not. I don't go down to the grocery stores and say, I need some atoms with these properties, right? Who the hell does that? Except some weirdo scientist, right? I need I need some oxygen and some some nice red oxygen, right? No, that's not how human minds work, right? And this about you cannot alter physical laws. Well, and a law is an artificial construct based on a generalized understanding of what is going on in the world, right? But that's not what you don't refer to the laws of gravity when you need to take a walk in the woods, because the physical laws are pure abstractions, while you are in something that is a combination of your abstractions and that reality, right? There's nothing reality in a physical law. It's just a generalized story about what is going on, right? You don't brush up on the laws of gravity in order to jump in a parachute, right? It's just, okay, now I'm going to jump in a parachute. I really need to read Einstein before. That's not what you do, right? So there is an old saying which applies as much to engineering as to science. Nature, to be commanded, must be obeyed. Oh, I don't like that one. I'm not obeying anything, right? This is the foundation of objective philosophy of the fourth level of control or lack of control. The foundation of objective philosophy. It's sort of underlying. It's almost like I feel like, the psychiatrist talking to this guy who's lying there on my couch, talking about it has to be objective. No, it must be rational. It has a sort of, it's almost a fetishism, or what the hell would the word be? Like, it's, I'm looking for a specific word. When you're sort of, when you have, your mind has become so focused on something that you are sort of forcing yourself, almost like forcing your mind to think in a certain way. What's the term for that? I'm not even sure. Maybe I'm a little tired today. I don't know. But it's like we get to that, and that's why, it's rational, it's objective, it's true, it's reality, it's and all these subjective relativists, they're out to get me, right? It's lost. So he's, whoa, relax, young man, right? In order to build a bridge, you must accept the properties of nature that are beyond your control. But if I can't control nature, how can I build a bridge? It's just, I think I understand where it's going. You can't just pretend that there's no gravity or something like that, right? You can, you can pretend, but it's not going to change anything that you pretend that, right? So if you're going to build a bridge, it's advisable to look into gravity, sort of, right? So, okay, you can build a stronger bridge. You cannot diminish gravity. You can build a bridge that opens. You cannot build a bridge that disappears and reappears at the push of a button. Really? How do you know? You can build a glass bottom boat, but you cannot build a boat with no bottom or top and expect it to float. You can, actually, but it's not going to float, possibly, right? You will find out. It's this. Now he's going into this. Okay, now I'm going to make a deduction from my previous experience of inductions and my physical laws, and say, okay, because this was the case in the past and it's still the case in the now, it is going to be the case in the rest of future, right? Now that's a huge leap, right? And he sneaks it in this way here, right? You can't predict the future, right? You can predict it, but that doesn't mean you know about the future. But maybe you can build a boat with no bottom that actually floats, right? It depends on what you mean by the bottom of a boat and so on, right? Now these are examples that are too fluffy as arguments for this unchanging external objective future or whatever it is, right? He wants to be able to be certain, right? Because for certainty to be possible, he needs to be able to say this is going to be the case in the rest of future, however far that might be, right? Like, isn't it Woody Allen who said that infinity is a very long time, particularly towards the end, right? So these kind of coffee conversation kind of arguments is not going to crack it as essential philosophy for me, right? It has to be better than that. These metaphysical differences are how we begin. So now we talk about metaphysics, right? Directly. So it's just like, okay, these are they're metaphysical, but aren't you also referring to specific physical things, right? So I would rather say that this is physics rather than metaphysics, right? This, what you did over here to summarize the four levels on controls, that is a kind of metaphysics, or at least that's a part of later metaphysics, rather than how do you understand your basic experience, which you're used to do these kind of creating four levels of control, right? Okay. That which we control and that which we cannot control. We can think of these layers as an inverted pyramid of prevalence. We have absolutely no control over most of the universe. Most of the universe. I don't like these. He's trying to make clear-cut delineations, and then it's like most of the universe, right? It's these get out of jail cards that are so fucking annoying. If you want to make dichotomies and trichotomies and what other they are called, they have to be sharp, right? They have to be. We cannot will the galaxy of Andromeda to change its course. Just about everything is made of hydrogen, and just about everything lies beyond our control. Only a tiny subsection of that which exists. But how do you know what exists, right? You're talking about the whole fucking universe. I mean, oh my God. So now you're just jumping from eating a peach to the whole of universe is this, and you can't control any of it, basically, right? So how do you know about it? I mean, if you can't control it, how can you know about it? Knowing about it is some kind of insight, at least, where you have to take some control of the experience of it, at least, right? So it's just sort of whoa. He knows about the whole universe. It's like he's a kind of god descending from his, electrified jello and coming to tell the human beings, this is how it is, right? Think for yourself. No, think of yourself. Most of the universe is beyond your control. How the hell do I know? Including, if you're referring to my inner experience, my brain is in control of that somehow, right? Isn't it? And if we're talking about my brain, I'm talking about something that is outside my mind. Otherwise, it wouldn't only be in my mind. So that if the brain is inside my skull, which outside my mind, then my brain must be outside my mind, right? But if it's outside my mind, how the hell can I experience it? So all of what you are referring to are all things that are inside your mind. It is your mind that you're referring to whenever you're talking about anything. And if you say that it's something outside your mind, then it's just a representation of something outside your mind, which you do not have any access to at all, except whatever you... When you have the experience, you make a decision based on those experiences. And that's how you handle that external world. That's all you get, right? You get your cognitions of elephant, and your mind is basically saying, hey, take a look at that. That's important, right? You don't know what the importance is, but it's sort of pointing you at a certain part of your experience as elephant. That's important compared to the rest, apparently, right? There might be other things that are also important, and you have to choose and, triage or whatever, right? But your mind is sort of pinpointing specific things and saying, well, we might have to handle this, right? This is a saber-toothed tiger. Hear the roar, right? Do something. But you don't know what it really is, because your experience of it is in your mind. Otherwise, you couldn't experience it. So what is really going on is not knowable, right? It's unknowable. Okay. Think of your body. Billions of people live in the world, but no one except you can directly will your right hand to scratch your eyebrow. Only you have direct physical control over your own body. Someone else can force you to do something, but they cannot directly control your body in the same way that you can. Stealing a car does not transfer its rightful ownership. No. That's why people are controlled. They are mind controlled to get the bodies to do things that those who control their minds want them to do, right? They give them some fear, pandemic, right? And then stick this in your arm, right? Oh, yes, let me stick that, right? That's mind control. Your mind, which is really you, more or less, is more or less. That's again, more or less, right? More or less. More or less. Be very careful of using terms like more or less, right? It's like a get out of jail card. If you were going to attack him or argue with him on this particular thing here, he would say, yeah, but it's more or less. So you can't argue about it, right? It's not under your control. It is the very source of the control that you exercise over your body and over the objects in your vicinity that you can control. But the objects in your vicinity, that you can control, what did he say over here? You may disagree with me that the fourth level is the foundation of objective. The fourth level is where you have zero control, and this is where we find objective, empirical, uncontrollable reality. Okay, and here he says, control exercise over your body and over the objects in your vicinity that you can control. So what does he mean by objective reality? Uncontrollable objective reality, right? And objects in your vicinity that you can control. So these are objects that can't be objective, or what? You see? I mean, this is bullshit, right? I mean, if this level of philosophy is beyond comprehension, when you try to stitch this together, right? You can't take the rest of it seriously, because he violates his own axiom here, right? The fourth level is where we have zero control, and this is where we find objective, empirical, uncontrollable reality. I mean, how can you not understand this as your experience of anything external is that which is objective, empirical, and uncontrollable reality? And then he says over here, oh, there are objects in your vicinity that you can control. So what the hell is he saying, man? So the foundations of interaction with objects is unclarified. It's fucked up by him. He may have some understanding of what he's saying, but his writing about his philosophy sucks, right? You can't have metaphysics or physics based on this. It sucks, right? Imagine you are walking by a road in flip-flops and you stub your toe hard on a broken piece of sidewalk. You cry out in pain, bend over, rub your toe, and check for damage. If asked, you would surely say that stubbing your toe was a negative event. Well, you don't make philosophy by going up to people and saying, okay, do you feel a negative event when you did that? That's not how you do philosophy, right? You control the narrative of what you are thinking about. You're not putting words into some third party's mouth and say, yeah, they would say it's a negative event, so now it's 2 against 1 compared to the reader, and now you have to accept negative events. This is sophistry, right? This is sophistry. It's bullshit, right? Let me get rid of that. Suddenly a bus comes careening off the road and crashes into the sidewalk just a few feet in front of you. Immediately your perspective of the entire sequence changes. The broken piece of sidewalk, formerly your enemy, now becomes your salvation. Stopping your toe, formerly a negative event, now becomes a wonderful life-saving happenstance. Yeah. What is basically saying, there's no objective story about reality then, right? There's no objective way of piecing together a story about good or bad in reality. This should be very important in his approach to morality, right? Nothing has changed in reality, of course. You did stub your toe. It did cause pain, and the body. No. Pain is not a part of reality. Right? No. The pain is not reality. No. That's something that is inside your body and mind. That's not reality, right? Okay, you can say that your body is a part of reality. That's part of your reality, which is. But if we need to talk about objective, it can't be objective that you have pain. That's particular only to you. Nobody else can experience your pain, so it can't be objective. So it can't be reality, right? So now you're violating objectivity. You haven't classified that sufficiently. It's very, very poor, this, right? Nothing has changed in reality, of course. You did stop the toe pain onto the sidewalk, but your perspective on the sequence of events has altered enormously. Your mind can change. This does not change reality, but events in reality can change everything within your mind. But what are you talking about when you're talking about reality? It's like you're saying, out here is reality and here is my mind. But if reality is disconnected from your mind, how the hell do you have access to it? Right? All these are presupposing, these are prejudicial axioms about understanding of your mind, where you take some part. It's like taking, if you have an atlas and you take some part of the atlas and put out here and say, okay, now I'm going to compare this part of the atlas with the atlas, and saying this is another thing than the atlas I just pulled it out of. But it isn't. You're just categorizing things in certain ways without arguing why you are categorizing them this way, right? There is only one thing you have access to, and that is your experience, right? You need to understand this, otherwise you will get your whole philosophy wrong, right? It will be wrong. You can't get from, you can't make that jump and say a part of my experience is that reality that I'm then comparing to my experience. And if there's discrepancies, it's this reality out here that is right. No, you only have your fucking experience, right? That's why philosophy is so fucking difficult at times. Okay. Once we understand that there are things we can alter directly, things we can't alter indirectly, and things that we cannot alter, then we truly begin to understand how the foundation for an acceptance of the objective reality begins to take shape. Acceptance. No. That has nothing to do in philosophy, right? Just accept what you're told, right? It's this vantage point. It's sort of talking to the little people. You don't understand this shit, right? You need to accept this. Don't accept anything. Don't accept anything. Think for yourself, right? Okay. We are at the 1 hour and 7 minutes mark, and radical skepticism might be a good place to head off into the part 7 when we get so far. So I hope you enjoyed, and leave me a comment or two, and let's see each other in part 7 in hopefully a near future, right? If I'm not running out of space, let's say. Okay, have a nice day.